Okay, my name is Howard Eber, and I am a recovered alcoholic. I want to welcome everyone to what actually comes out to be week number 4 of this new cycle of the Big Book study, but we're going to be doing things a little differently today, and only today. You see, we reached in the second, in the second edition, the forward to the second edition, we reached the point where Bill points out that in early 1941, there were 2,000 members of AA. By the end of 1941, there were 8,000. They quadrupled. What happened between early and late 1941 to account for that? And the thing that did it is the Jack Alexander article. And we're gonna, it was a surprise to me, I think, a little bit last week when I've been speaking to guys during the week, and how many of us really haven't read that article all the way through. It's at most meetings you could PDF get it on PDF on Google. But what we're going to do today is we are going to read it. We get as far as we can in it. We're going to do some preliminary work, set up what we're doing, and then we're going to get into the article. And we have some extraordinary people here to help us out. First is Jim Worley. He's here from Cancun. He's going to be our co-host. He's going to jump in as we're reading, and then they don't even realize I've asked them, made them co-host yet. But Gary and Chris Shorter and Patrick O'Donnell are here. I'm going to make them co-host too. And I'm going to tell you guys, if you have anything to add at any point, just raise your hand and Kathy and I will recognize you. So if
Hello.
that's something to
Hey,
add, let
good
us know.
afternoon.
Okay, let's get started. We last week if you have the book, you know what? We don't need to read that. We're talking about the Jack Alexander article. Most of you have seen these things. You certainly have read about it in the book. Let me tell you a little bit about what the how this thing came about. In March of 1941, this article appeared in Saturday Evening Post. Here's how that happened. Jim Burwell, who wrote the Vicious Cycle in the Big Book, had just moved to Philadelphia and was trying to get a local bookstore to carry the Big Book. The bookstore's manager was not interested, but the conversation was overheard by a woman in the store by the name of Helen Hammer. She spoke up and she sent the book to our alcoholic nephew in Los Angeles, who sobered up instantly and stayed that way for some 3 months. But the store manager remained unimpressed. When Mrs. Hamers heard of Jim's attempt to start a group in Philadelphia, she introduced him to her husband, Dr. Weiss Hammer. Dr. Hammer was a friend of Judge Curtis Bach. It's amazing how all these things fall in place. Judge Curtis Bach was the owner of the Saturday Evening Post. He persuaded Bach to do a story on AA. Bach urged his editors to assign Jack Alexander, an experienced, even cynical reporter, to do the feature story. Alexander was chosen because he had a reputation for being hard-nosed. He had just completed a story exposing the New Jersey rackets, prided himself on his cynicisms. Alexander had many doubts doing a story on a bunch of drunks, and the story he wrote for AA in May of 1945 was called Was My Leg Being Pulled? He said, all I knew of alcoholism at the time was that, like most other non-alcoholics, I'd had my hand bitten and my nose punched on numerous occasions by alcoholic pals to whom I extended a hand unwisely. It always seemed afterwards. Anyway, I had an understandable skepticism about the whole business. But he spent a week with Bill Wilson and other members in New York. Quote, we gave him the most exhaustive briefing on Alcoholics Anonymous any writer had ever had, said Bill. First, he met our trustees and the New York people, and then we towed him all over the country. One of the people he interviewed in New York was Marty Mann, the first woman to achieve lasting sobriety in AA. Her story, Women Suffer Too, is in the Big Book. She's called Sarah Martin in the story that we're about to read. So when you hear the name Sarah Martin, that is Marty Mann. And she is disguised further by changing her time in London to time in Paris. But Sarah Martin is without doubt Marty Mann. When the story came out, Marty said it was the most exciting thing that ever happened because we wanted publicity so badly. We wanted somebody to know about us. Alexander felt the week was a success from one standpoint. He said, I knew I had the makings of a readable report, but unfortunately, it didn't believe in it. I didn't quite believe in it, and Bill told me so. Bill convinced him that he should visit other cities to visit groups and interview other members. Bill, Bob, and elders of the Akron group in New York, Cleveland, Philadelphia, Chicago spent uncounted hours with Jack Alexander. When he reached his own hometown of St. Louis, he met a member of his own friends who were now AA members, and the last remnants of skepticism vanished. Once rollicking rum pots, they were now sober. It didn't seem possible, but there it was, he wrote. When Alexander could feel AA in the very marrow of his bones, he proceeded to write the story that rocked drunks and their families all over the world. Come then the deluge, Bill wrote. 6,000 frantic appeals from alcoholics and their families hit the New York office. AA's first secretary, Ruth Hock, poured at random through the mass of letters, laughing and crying by turns, but it was clear they couldn't handle the mail by themselves, and form letters couldn't be enough. Each letter had to have an understanding, personal reply. Let me repeat that. 6,000 responses, and a reply to each one of them. Fortunately, they had anticipated this problem, and Lois Wilson, in anticipation of bringing a strong response, had been organizing anyone who could type into squads and scheduling those who could not type to answer the telephones in preparation of the expected deluge. Even so, the response exceeded anyone's wildest expectations. Within days, meeting attendance doubled. Within weeks, newcomers were being sent out on 12-step calls to other alcoholics. Ruth Hock and Bobby Berger, along with Lois and her volunteers, worked day and night for 5 or 6 weeks to answer all the mail. The chain reaction Bill had envisioned when he was still a patient at Towns Hospital had become a fact. Bill's vision of hope, of one alcoholic, another, helping another, and an endless stream of alcoholics helping each other. Nothing could stop AA now, and was now established as an American institution, Bill felt. Bill realized he must, for the first time, ask the members for assistance. It was determined that if each group gave AA $1 per member, they would eventually have enough money to pay the New York office's expenses and rely no further upon outside charity or insufficient book sales. Most groups were happy to contribute to pay the expense of the New York office, and most continue to do so today. Thus, the tradition of self-support had a firm beginning. The magazine's decision to do a feature story on AA would have been enough for editors all across the country to find AA newsworthy, but the story didn't stop with merely reporting on AA. It endorsed its effectiveness. It's hard for us today to imagine the enormous excitement this article gathered among AA members. By 1950, AA membership was approaching 100,000, and there were 3,500 groups nationwide. Remember, we started early 41 with 2,000. We're now at 100,000. By April of that year, the Saturday Evening Post featured another article by Alexander entitled "Drunkards' Best Friends." In 1953, he became a member of the Alcoholic Foundation's Board of Trustees. He wrote articles for the AA Grapevine and helped Bill edit 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. I bet you didn't know that. He was involved in editing the 12 and the 12. AA has World Services has reprinted the article regularly in pamphlet form, at first under its original title. Now it's just the Jack Alexander article. How well we love Jack, wrote Bill in 1951. We should all be grateful to Jack Alexander, one of AA's earliest friends in the press. Let's get to it. The Saturday Evening Post. Andy, do you have a picture of the cover? or Jim. Jim, I gotta unmute. You gotta unmute. I gotta unmute everybody here. There we go. You're good.
Let me, well, I'm trying to share something here, but it just doesn't want to. There we go. This is, I just have a couple of slides real quickly. There we go. I may be a little repetitive here, but his Saturday Evening Post article, you got to understand that this was a super popular magazine. It's hard to understand the popularity of print magazines in 2026, but it was. And it was published and became AA's most notable public relations blessing. The publicity caused 1941 membership to jump from 2,000 to 8,000. Well, maybe. That's what the publicity says. Probably other sources say 6,000. And at the end of 1941, AA had 5,500 members, according to Arthur S. So Bill always liked to round up. Anyway, Bill and two other members' pictures appeared full face in the article. There's the cover. And the article led to over 6,000 appeals for help to the office. Consequently, the office started asking for donations. Hey, we got a lot to do. We're getting all this. Send us in $1. And and there were a lot of pictures in there, which caused some problems. Let me go here to second one. These are some of the pictures. We'll see them, I think, as we read through the article. But at the last moment, there was a real dilemma. The editors wanted real photographs to illustrate the article. Some of them had to be on the sensational side. We objected, Bill says. Finally, the Post said, no pictures, no article. The choice was ours, and it was a hard one. So you can see a picture there of a group of people there in the old 24th Street clubhouse. And the article was about 7,500 words long, and with 4 photographs of members, mostly unidentified, in typical alcoholic and AA related circumstances. And some of the people there, we have identified all of them. I think you can get a anonymity protected last name abbreviated list on page 247 of Pass It On. But these are some of the people there. Horace Crystal is the first one over there on the left. He was important, and a lady there. Then the guy there on the left, kind of taller guy there, that was old Tom. He was the janitor there. He just gotten out of this insane asylum. And of course, there's Ruth Hawk and Bill, and next to Bill is Paul Stanley from Akron. Then of course Lois and some of the other people, but the others are named in Pass It On, I think, on page 247. So some of these things we'll be seeing as we go through the article, and as Howard mentioned, as we go through, we'll try and pick out any other information that will be relevant.
Thank you, Jim. And as I said, as we go through the meeting, Gary, Chris, Patrick, Jim, if you have anything you want to add at any time, just hit the raise hand and we'll get you taken care of. So we're going to start to read the Jack Alexander article about AA. Andy will put it up, and I don't know if we can get through it all, but we're going to do our damnedest. There's a couple of different versions of it, depending on when you get them. This is what they look like. Incidentally, I don't know if Jim mentioned it, I don't think he did. Jack Alexander was at the time what was called a muckraking reporter. he went around exposing, fraud and things like that. Um, I guess today you might identify him with guys like Geraldo Rivera, or before that, Jack Anderson or Mike Wallace from 60 Minutes. Uh, these are guys that went around exposing different companies and people. Uh, and he tried to do that with AA and was completely turned around. That it was not the fraud that he had thought, it was the real thing. And he became, as we mentioned, one of our greatest supporters all through the years. He even, one little factoid here, um, uh, he was involved with the movement at the time for Cheryl Chessman was sentenced to death, and there was a movement going on to try and get him relieved of that, released from that, reprieved from that. And Jack Alexander wrote an article about him because he found that this guy, Cheryl Chapman, had the same kind of conversion that people in AA had. And he also put Bill in touch with Cheryl Chapman. And that's the fact I was getting to, that I didn't know, that I don't know if anyone else knows that. But he put Bill together with Cheryl Chessman to have some talks about spiritual experiences. Unfortunately, Cheryl Chessman was indeed executed, but it's how little things come together in AA. Okay, let's not waste any more time. Here's the article. Incidentally, if back that up a little bit, if you can get that picture. Did anybody ever look real closely at this picture? What this is? This guy has a drink in his hand and he's got a towel tied and knotted around the drink. And he's got the other side of the towel around his neck and he's pulling the glass up to his mouth with his left hand as he drinks with his right hand because he couldn't steady his hand enough without using the towel in the two hands. It's a great picture. You may have looked at it and wondered what the hell is going on, but that's it. It's a guy who's trying to drink and he's shaking like crazy. Okay, let's get to the article finally. This isn't the beginning of it, Andy. I think it's on the other side. Three men sat around the bed. There we go. If you want, Andy, you could use the PDF of the IP, whatever's easier to read. Yeah, I think that'll be easier, wouldn't it? Yeah, so let's read from the IP.
Yeah, what starting on?
I'm going to start. Here we go. Keep turn next page. We're almost there. Yeah, oh, keep going. There we go. We're going to get started. And when we come across some people, like the article begins by saying three men sat around the bed. If any of our hosts can identify some of those people, just jump in and let us know. Okay, three men sat around the bed of an alcoholic patient in the psychopathic ward of Philadelphia General Hospital one afternoon a few weeks ago. The man in the bed, who was a complete stranger to them, had the drawn and slightly stupid look that inebriates get while being defogged or after a bender. The only thing that was noteworthy about the callers, except for the obvious contrast between their well-groomed appearances and that of the patient, was the fact that each had been through the defogging process many times himself. They were members of Alcoholics Anonymous, a band of ex-problem drinkers who made an avocation of helping other alcoholics to beat the liquor habit. And of course, avocation just means hobby. It's not something they do for a living. The man in the bed was a mechanic. Jim, do you have any identification on these guys by any chance? Okay.
No, I don't know who that might be.
Okay. But he was a mechanic. Visitors had been, his visitors had been educated at Princeton, Yale, and Pennsylvania, and were by occupation a salesman, a lawyer, a publicity man. Less than a year before, one had been in shackles in the same ward. One of his companions had been what is known among alcoholics as a sanitarium commuter. Here's a great expression for someone who's in and out of treatment, He's a sanitarium commuter. He had moved from place to place, bedeviling the staffs of the county's leading institutions for the treatment of alcoholics. The other had spent 20 years of his life all outside institution walls, making life miserable for himself and his family and his employers, as well as sundry well-meaning relatives who had had the temerity to interfere. The air of the ward was thick with the aroma of paraldehyde, an unpleasant cocktail smelling like a mixture of alcohol and ether, which hospitals sometimes use to taper off the paralyzed drinker and soothe his squirming nerves. I was told that paraldehyde is a mixture of alcohol and opium. Is that true? No? You don't know? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I know it's something that everybody, including Dr. Bob, used a lot.
Yeah. Well, even if it wasn't morphine, ether is enough. Ether is enough. Okay. The visitors seemed oblivious of this and of the depressing atmosphere that clings to even the nicest psychopathic wards. They smoked and talked with the patient for 20 minutes or so, then left their personal cards and departed. If the man in the bed felt that he would like to see one of them again, they told him he only had to put in a telephone call. They made it plain that if he actually wanted to stop drinking, they would leave their work or get up in the middle of the night to hurry to where he was. Sounds like some of the 12 inconveniences we talk about, huh, Chris? The members of Alcoholics Anonymous do not pursue or coddle a malingering prospect, and they know the strange tricks of the alcoholic as a reformed swindler knows the art of bamboozling. Herein lies much of the unique strength of a movement which in the past 6 years has brought recovery to around 2,000 men and women, a large percentage of whom had been considered medically hopeless. Doctors and clergymen, working separately or together, have always managed to salvage a few cases. In isolated instances, drinkers have found their own methods of quitting, but the inroads into alcoholism have only been negligible, and it seems one of the great unsolved public health enigmas. By nature, touchy and suspicious, the alcoholic likes to be left alone to work out his puzzle, and he has a convenient way of ignoring the tragedy which he inflicts, meanwhile, upon those who are close to him. Anyone identify with that? You bet. He holds desperately to a conviction that, although he has not been able to handle alcohol in the past, he will ultimately succeed in becoming a controlled drinker. Sound familiar? One of medicine's queerest animals, he is as often as not an acutely intelligent person. He fences with professional men and relatives who attempt to aid him, and he gets a perverse satisfaction out of tripping them up in an argument. Any of you guys want to add anything before I go on? No? Okay. We're on the bottom of page 10 in this little flyer, in this little IP. There's no specious excuse for drinking which the troubleshooters of Alcoholics Anonymous have not heard or used themselves. Specious is defined as looking right or looking true, but actually being false, wrong, or misleading. In other words, something that looks true but is not. When one of their prospects hands them a rationalization for getting soused, they match it with half a dozen of their own experience. This upsets him a little, and he gets defensive. He looks to their neat clothing and smooth shaved faces and charges them with being goody-goodies who don't know what it is to struggle with drink. They reply by relating their own stories, the double scotches and brandies before breakfast, the vague feeling of discomfort which precedes a drinking bout, the awakening from a spree without being able to account for the actions of several days, and the haunting fear that possibly they had run down someone with their automobiles. I used to have a poster up on my ceiling when I lived in Manhattan, and it said, "Don't worry, Howard, you're home." Because that's the first thing I saw when I would come out of it. I'd look up at the ceiling. "Don't worry, Howard, you're home." Okay. In any case, let's get back to the article. They tell of 8-ounce bottles of gin hidden between pictures and in cachets from cellar to attic, of spending whole days in motion picture houses to stave off the temptation to drink, of sneaking out of the office for quickies during the day. They talk of losing jobs and stealing money from their wives' purses, of putting pepper in whiskey to give it a tang, of tippling on bitters and sedative tablets or on mouthwash or hair tonic, of getting into the habit of camping outside the neighborhood tavern 10 minutes before opening time. They describe a hand so jittery, and this is the cover, so jittery that it could not fit a pony to the lips without spilling its contents, drinking liquor from a beer stein because it could be steadied with 2 hands, although at the risk of chipping a front tooth, tying an end of a towel about a glass, looping the towel around the back of the neck, and drawing the free end with the other hand, pulley fashion, to advance the glass to the mouth. Hands so shaky they feel as if they were about to snap off and fly into space. Sitting on hands for hours to keep them from doing this. These and other bits of drinking law usually manage to convince the alcoholic that he's talking to blood brothers. A bridge of confidence is thereby erected, spanning a gap which has baffled the physician, the minister, the priest, or the hapless relatives. Over this connection, the troubleshooters convey, bit by bit, the details of the program for living which has worked for them and which they feel can work for any other alcoholic. They concede, as out of their own orbit, only those who are psychotic or who are already suffering from the physical impairment known as wet brain. At the same time, they see to it that the prospect gets whatever medical attention is needed. They're not doctors. They rely on the doctors. Many doctors and staff of institutions throughout the country now suggest Alcoholics Anonymous to their drinking patients. In some towns, the courts and probation offices cooperate with the local group. In a few city psychopathic divisions, the workers of Alcoholics Anonymous are accorded the same visiting privileges as staff members. How's that? The workers of AA are accorded the same visiting privileges as staff members. Philadelphia General is one of these. Dr. John F. Stouffer, chief psychiatrist, says, "The alcoholics we get here are mostly those who cannot afford private treatment, and this is by far the greatest thing we've ever been able to offer them. Even among those who occasionally land back in here again, we observe a profound change in personality. You would hardly recognize them." The Illinois Medical Journal, in an editorial last December, went further than Dr. Stouffer in stating, quote, "It is indeed a miracle when a person who for years has been more or less constantly under the influence of alcohol and in whom his friends have lost all confidence will sit upright all night with a drunk and at stated intervals administer a small amount of liquor in accordance with the doctor's orders without taking a drop himself." This is a reference to the common aspect of the Arabian Nights adventures to which Alcoholics Anonymous workers dedicate themselves. Often it involves sitting upon as well as with the intoxicated person, as the impulse to jump out the window seems to be an attractive one to many alcoholics when in their cups. Only an alcoholic can squat on another alcoholic's chest for hours with the proper combination of discipline and sympathy. How's that? You thought you were special because you were able to get through to the alcoholic. I bet you didn't realize I'm special because I can actually sit on his chest without breaking any bones and somehow pour alcohol in his mouth. I did not realize I had that gift. In any case, um, um, during a recent trip around the East and Midwest, I met and talked with scores of AAs, as they call themselves, and found them to be unusually calm, tolerant people. Somehow, they seem better integrated than the average group of non-alcoholic individuals. Their transformation from cop fighters, canned heat drinkers, and you know what canned heat is sterno, right? People used to drink sterno. Never got there. And in some instances, wife beaters were startling. On one of the most influential newspapers in the country, I found that the city editor, the assistant city editor, and a nationally known reporter were AAs and strong in the confidence of their publisher. In another city, I heard a judge parole a drunken driver to an AA member. I'm going to take a guess here, Jim, guys, that maybe we're talking about Ebby being referred to
I doubt it. I mean, that happened a long time before AA was even founded. I don't think,
Oh, okay.
Jack Alexander would be referring to that here.
Yeah, too far back. Okay. The latter, during his drinking days, had smashed several cars and had his own operator's license suspended. The judge knew and was glad to trust him. A brilliant executive of an advertising firm disclosed that 2 years ago he'd been panhandling and sleeping in a doorway under an elevated structure. He had a favorite doorway, which he shared with other vagrants, and every few weeks he goes back and visits them, pays them a visit, just to assure himself he isn't dreaming. In Akron, as in other manufacturing centers, the groups include a heavy element of manual workers. In the Cleveland Athletic Club, I had luncheon with 5 lawyers, an accountant, an engineer, 3 salesmen, an insurance man, a buyer, a bartender, a chain store manager, a manager of an independent store, and a manufacturer's representative. They were members of a central committee which coordinates the work of 9 neighborhood groups. Cleveland, with more than 450 members, is the biggest of all of the AA centers. That's Clarence Snyder. The next largest are located in Chicago, Akron, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Washington, and New York. All told, there are groups in about 50 cities and towns. In discussing their work, the AA spoke of their drunk rescuing as insurance for themselves. Experience within the group has shown, they said, that once a recovered drinker slows up in this work, he's likely to go back to drinking himself. There is, they agreed, no such thing as an ex-alcoholic. If one is an alcoholic, that is a person who is unable to drink normally, one remains an alcoholic until he dies, just as a diabetic remains a diabetic. The best he can hope for is to become an arrested case with drunk saving as his insulin. At least the AAs say so, and medical opinion tends to support them. All but a few said they had lost their desire for alcohol. Most serve liquor in their homes when friends drop in, and they still go to bars with companions who drink. The AAs tipple on soft drinks and coffee. One, a sales manager, acts as a bartender at his company's annual jamboree in Atlantic City and spends his nights tucking the celebrators into their beds. Only a few of those who recover fail to lose the feeling that at any minute they might thoughtlessly take one drink and skyrocket off a disastrous binge. An AA who is a clerk in an eastern city hasn't had a sniffer in 3.5 years, but says he still has to walk fast past saloons to circumvent the old impulse. But he's an exception. The only hangover from the wild days that plagues the AA is a recurrent nightmare. In the dream, he finds himself trying to conceal his condition from the community. Even this symptom disappears shortly in most cases. Surprisingly, the rate of employment among these people who formerly drank themselves out of job after job is said to be around 90%. 100% effectiveness with non-psychotic drinkers who sincerely want to quit is claimed by the workers of Alcoholics Anonymous. Rarely have we seen a person fail, right? Gary, you had your hand up? Where's Gary? Gary?
You just came in.
Hi there. I've been having terrible technical problems.
Okay. Sorry about that. You had your hand up, Gary?
Did well, actually, as long as I think you want to read out of the original article and not this reprint. The
Okay.
reason being is that I believe this has been updated. So in other words, you do not have the Cleveland 450 followed by Akron at 200. That's a Jack Alexander lists the cities in order of how many people were sober in that location. And then also you have a record of how long people have been sober. So you start off with 5 years and so forth, and then you have things like 3.5 years and one slip. And I don't find that being in the pamphlet either.
Oh, great. Okay. That I
The other thing I'll mention while Gary is mentioning that is that reading out of the original article, I don't have it in front of me, but what we're reading out of says ex-problem drinker. And my guess is, although I don't have it in front of me, the original article probably said ex-alcoholic. Because the term ex-alcoholic was in the big book until 1947. And so, and this is a 1941 article, so I'm
Okay.
not sure.
All right, that's what I'm going to do. I've located the position where we would be. It's right there in front of us where it says 100% effectiveness. So I'm going to start reading from that. It's not as easy to read, but we're going to do it. That makes perfect sense. Okay, 100% effectiveness with non-psychotic drinkers who sincerely want to quit is claimed by the workers of Alcoholics Anonymous. The program will not work, they add, with those who only want to quit, or who want to quit because they're afraid of losing their families or their jobs. The effective desire, they state, must be based upon enlightened self-interest. The applicant must want to get away from liquor to head off incarceration or premature death. He must be fed up with the stark social loneliness which engulfs the uncontrolled drinker, and he must want to put some order into his bungled life. As it is impossible to disqualify all borderline applicants, the working percentage of recovery falls below the 100% mark. According to AA's estimation, 50% of the alcoholics taken in hand recover almost immediately. This is beginning to sound familiar, guys. 25% get well after suffering a relapse or two, and the rest remain doubtful. So we're talking about 75%, as it says in the book. This rate of success is exceptionally high. Statistics on traditional medical and religious cures are lacking, but it's been informally estimated that there are no more than 2 or 3% effective on run-of-the-mind cases. They are 2 or 3% effective on run-of-the-mind causes. Although it's too early to state that Alcoholics Anonymous is a definite answer to alcoholism, its brief record is impressive, and it is receiving hopeful support. John D. Rockefeller Jr. helped defray the expense of getting it started, and has gone out of his way to get other prominent men interested. Rockefeller's gift was a small one, in deference to the insistence of the originators that the movement be kept on a voluntary, non-payment basis. There are no salaried organizers, no dues, no offices, no control, no central control. Locally, the rents of assembly halls are met by passing the hat at meetings. In small communities, no collections are taken, as the gatherings are held in a private home. A small office in downtown New York acts merely as a clearinghouse for information. There's no name on the door, and mail is received anonymously through Box 658. Church Street Annex Post Office. The only income, which is money received from the sale of the book describing the work, is handled by the Alcoholic Foundation, a board composed of 3 alcoholics and 4 non-alcoholics. In Chicago, 25 doctors worked hand in hand with Alcoholics Anonymous, contributing their services and referring their own alcoholic patients to the group, which now numbers around 200. The same cooperation exists in Cleveland and to a lesser degree in other centers. A physician, here's our friend, Dr. W.D. Silkworth, Silky, of New York City, gave the movement its first encouragement. However, many doctors remained skeptical. Dr. Foster Kennedy, an eminent New York neurologist, probably had those in mind when he stated at a meeting a year ago, quote, "The aim of those concerned in this effort against alcoholism is high. Their success has been considerable, and I believe medical men of goodwill should aid." The active help of 2 medical men of goodwill, Doctors A. Weiss Hammer and C. Dudley Saul, has assisted greatly in making the Philadelphia unit one of the more effective of the younger groups. The movement there had its mark of ever having been folded. What's that? Wait a minute. Did I lose myself here?
No, that's it.
That's it. Movement then had its, yeah, okay.
Will you explain that?
Huh?
That's what it says.
Yeah, that's what it says. Had its mark of ever having been folded. Will you explain that? The witnesses looked stunned. I can explain it. This bid was never in that box. Isn't that
That's not the article.
That's not, yeah, I thought
Scroll
so.
down,
The
scroll
one on the
down.
bottom. That's the one. Okay. I should know that, right? I was a reporter before
No,
here.
no,
What's that?
back up.
Yeah, it's on the left side, Andy. Keep back a little bit more. Well, stop.
There.
There we go. Okay, so forget about what I just said a few seconds ago. At the bottom of the previous page, it says the movement there had its beginning in an offhand way in February 1940, when a businessman who was an AA convert was transferred to Philadelphia from New York.
This refers to Jimmy Burwell.
Jim Burwell. He was in that picture that we looked at before, right?
No,
No?
no, he
Okay.
wasn't there.
Okay, but fearful of backsliding for lack of rescue work, the newcomer rounded up 3 local barflies and started to work on them. He got them dry, and the quartet began ferreting out other cases. By last December 15th, 99 alcoholics had joined up. Of these, 86 were now total abstainers. 39 from 1 to 3 months, 17 from 3 to 6 months, and 25 from 6 to 10 months. 5 who had joined the unit after having belonged in other cities had been non-drinkers from 1 to 3 years. At the other end of this time scale, Akron, which cradled the movement, holds the intramural record for sustained abstinence. According to a recent checkup, 2 members have been riding the AA wagon for 5.5 years, 1 for 5 years, 3 for 4.5 years, 1 for the same period, and 1 skid 3 or 4 or 1 skid, 3 for 3.5 years, 7 for 3 years, 3 for 3 years and 1 skid each, 1 for 2.5 years, and 13 for 2 years. Sorry, I skipped through that. I messed that up. Previously, most of the Akronites and Philadelphians had been unable to stay away from liquor for longer than a few weeks. You guys have any names or identifies or these people? Anything?
No, I don't. There's just that one about Jimmy Burwell was, of course, the vicious cycle, the atheist who had gone from New York to Philadelphia, and after only about 4 or 5 days, found out he needed to work and play, as he said, with other alcoholics, and that's when he started the group in Philadelphia.
Wow. Thank you. Let's see, where am I here? At the other end of the, to finish that, in the Middle East, in the Middle West, that's of the United States, incidentally, not of the world. The work has been almost exclusively among persons who have not arrived at the institutional stage. The New York group, which has a similar nucleus, makes a sideline specialty of committed cases and has achieved striking results. In the summer of 1939, the group began working on the alcoholics confined in Rockland State Hospital at Orangeburg, a vast mental sanitarium which gets the hopeless alcoholics hog backwash of the big population centers. With the encouragement of Dr. R.E. Blaisdell, and we talk about Dr. Blaisdell in our workshop, the medical superintendent, a unit was formed within the walls and meetings were held in the recreation hall. New York's AAs went to Orangeburg to give talks and on Sunday evenings, the patients were brought in state-owned buses to a clubhouse which the Manhattan group rents on the west side. Last July 1st, 11 months later, records kept at the hospital showed that of 44 patients released to AA, 17 had no relapse, 14 others had only one. Of the rest, 9 had gone back to drinking in their home communities, 12 had returned to the hospital, 2 had not been traced. Dr. Blaisdell has written favorably about the work in the State Department of Mental Hygiene, and he praised it officially in his last annual report. Even better results were obtained in 2 public institutions in New Jersey, Greystone Park and Overbrook, which attract patients of better economic and social background than Rockland because of the nearness to prosperous suburban villages. Of 7 patients released from the Greystone Park Institution in 2 years, 5 have been abstained for periods of 1 to 2 years. According to AA records, 8 of 10 released from Overbrook had abstained for about the same length of time. The others had been from 1 to several relapses. Why some people became alcoholics is a question on which authorities disagree. Few think that anyone is born an alcoholic. One may be born, they say, with a hereditary predisposition to alcoholism, just as the way one may be born with a vulnerability to tuberculosis. The rest seems to depend upon environment and experience, although one theory has it that some people were allergic to alcohol, as hay fever sufferers are to pollens. Only one note is found to be common to all alcoholics: emotional immaturity. How's that? That's one thing we all have in common: emotional immaturity. Closely related to this is an observation that an unusually large number of alcoholics start out in life as an only child, as a youngest child, as the only boy in the family of girls, or the only girl in a family of boys. Many have records of childhood precocity. Not sure of that. Precocity, and were what known as spoiled children. Frequently, the situation is complicated by an off-center home atmosphere in which one parent is unduly cruel. the other overindulgent. Any combination of these factors plus a divorce or two tends to produce neurotic children who are poorly equipped emotionally to face the ordinary realities of adult life. In seeking escapes, one may immerse himself in his business, working 12 to 15 hours a day, or in sports, or in some artistic sideline. Others find what he thinks is a pleasant escape in drink. It bothers him his opinion. It bolsters his opinion of himself and temporarily wipes away any feeling of social inferiority which he may have. Light drinking leads to heavy drinking. Friends and family are alienated, and employers become disgusted. The drinker smolders with resentment and wallows in self-pity. He indulges in childish rationalizations to justify his drinking. He's been working hard and he deserves to relax. His throat hurts from an old tonsillectomy, and a drink would ease the pain. He has a headache. His wife does not understand him. His nerves are jumpy. Everybody's against him, and so on and on. He unconsciously becomes a chronic excuse maker for himself. All the time he's drinking, he tells himself and those who butt into his affairs that they can really become a controlled drinker if he wants to. To demonstrate his strength of will, he goes for weeks without taking a drop. He makes a point of calling at his favorite bar at a certain time each day and ostensibly sipping milk or a carbonated beverage, but realizing that he is indulging in juvenile exhibitionism. Falsely encouraged, he shifts to a routine of one beer a day, and that's the beginning of the end once more. Beer leads inevitably to more beer and then to hard liquor. Hard liquor lends to another five-rate bender. Oddly, the trigger which sets off the explosion isn't apt to be a stroke of business success as it is a run of bad luck. An alcoholic can stand neither prosperity nor adversity. Do you want to?
Sure.
Sure. Right there.
All right. Oh. The victim is puzzled on coming out of the alcoholic fog without his being aware of any change. A habit had gradually become an obsession. After a while, he no longer needs his rationalizations to justify the fatal first drink. All he knows is that he feels swamped by uneasiness or elation. And before he realizes what is happening, he is standing at the bar with an empty whiskey pony in front of him and a stimulating sensation in his throat. By some peculiar quirk of his mind, he has been able to draw a curtain over the memory of the intense pain and remorse caused by preceding stem winders. After many experiences of his kind, the alcoholic begins to realize that he does not understand himself. He wonders whether his power of will, though strong in other fields, isn't defenseless against alcohol. He may go on trying to defeat his obsession and wind up in a sanitarium. He may give up the fight as hopeless and try to kill himself, or he may seek outside help. If he applies to Alcoholics Anonymous, he is first brought around to admit that alcohol has him whipped and that his life has become unmanageable. Having achieved this state of intellectual humility, he is given a dose of religion in its broadest sense. He is asked to believe in a power that is greater than himself, or at least to keep an open mind on that subject while he goes on with the rest of the program. Excuse me. Any concept of the higher power is acceptable. A skeptic or agnostic may choose to think of his inner self, the miracle of growth, a tree, the catharis, which
Scroll down.
the miracle of growth, a tree, man's wonderment. Is this it?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. At the physical universe, the structure of the atom, or where mathematical infinity, whatever form is visualized, the neophyte is taught that He must rely upon it and in his own way to pray to the power for strength. He next makes a sort of moral inventory of himself with the private aid of another person, one of his AA sponsors, a priest, a minister, a psychiatrist, or anyone else he fancies. If it gives him any relief, he may get up at at a meeting and recite his misdeeds, but he is not required to do so. He restores what he may have stolen while intoxicated and arranged to pay off old debts and to make good on rubber checks. He makes amends to persons he has abused and in general cleans up his past as well as he is able to. It is not uncommon for his sponsors to lend him money to help him out in the early stages.
Can we hold on for a minute? Any of you guys care to comment on, because we're going through how the steps are presented to the newcomer. I'm just wondering, Chris or Jim or Gary, any of you guys wanted to comment on that?
No, I don't. Things were not nearly as rigid, mechanized, and formulated as anything we use today. In fact, there were a lot of starting in 1940, actually, a little later in Akron, the Akron Manual and a study of the 12 steps started coming out, but people did not do anything like what we do today. And they would talk about the steps and the steps existed, but it was nothing like we would recognize today as going through the steps or working the steps with a sponsor and reading out of the big book and things like that. It was much less formalized and organized, the study of the steps.
But then also there's the Cleveland or the Cleveland Akron schism with New York.
Mm.
And if I was dealing with Gail LaCroix when she tells her history, when she came in, even into the 70s, they were mainly using slogans. A lot of people weren't using the big book as late as that at all in Akron and Cleveland. So it took them a while to warm up to it. So it's difficult to make assumptions that there are differences in AA and what people ended up doing. And actually, I'm a Clevelander, and and even to this day, you can go to a meeting in Cleveland, and there you can hear things. If you get lost in the steps, remember the four absolutes.
Is that one of their expressions?
That's exactly where I got it in one of the Lee Mayfield clubhouse, which unfortunately they had to move out of the original because of a fire. But they used to have the steps, and they used to have the traditions, and then right in the middle of the two were the four absolutes to give you a reminder. It's a little different of a flavor.
Wow. You get tripped up in the steps, remember the four absolutes.
Yeah, there you go.
They're interesting. All right, we're going to read to here, and then we're going to stop and ask some questions. How's that?
Okay.
Okay.
So it's here.
So yeah, that's where we start. At the top of the page, Andy, this catharsis. There we go.
This catharsis is regarded as important because of the compulsion which a feeling of guilt exerts in the alcoholic obsession. As nothing tends to push an alcoholic toward the bottle more than personal resentments, the pupil also makes out a list of his grudges and resolves not to be stirred by them.
Scroll down, please.
At
So we can follow.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Where are you?
Where are we?
At this point, he is ready to start working. We're
Okay. At this point, is that where we're up to?
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
At this point, he's ready to start working. Okay.
yeah. On other active alcoholics by the process of extroversion, which the work entails, he is enabled to think less of his own troubles. The more drinkers he succeeds in swinging into Alcoholics Anonymous, the greater his responsibility to the group becomes. He can't get drunk now without injuring the people who have proved themselves his best friends. He's beginning to grow up emotionally and to sit, I beg your pardon, and to quit being a leaner. If raised in an Orthodox church, he usually, but not always, becomes a regular communicant again. Simultaneously with the making over of the alcoholic goes the process of adjusting his family to his new way of living. The wife or husband of the alcoholic and the children too frequently become neurotics from being exposed to drinking excesses over a period of years. Re-education of the family is an essential part of the follow-up program which is being devised. Alcoholics Anonymous, which is a
Synthesis.
okay,
Got it.
of old ideas rather than a new discovery, owes its existence to the new collaboration of a New York stockbroker and an Akron physician. Both broker and the Akron physician, both alcoholics, they met for the first time a little less than 6 years ago. In 35 years of periodic drinking, Dr. Armstrong, to give
Dr. Bob, of course. Dr.
Yeah.
Armstrong.
Oh, okay. To give the physician a fictitious name, had drunk himself out of most of his practice. Armstrong, aka Dr. Bob Smith, had tried everything, including the Oxford group, and had shown no improvement. On Mother's Day in 1935, he staggered home in a typical drunk fashion, lugging an expensive potted plant, which he placed in his wife's lap. Then he went upstairs and passed out. Typical. At that moment, nervously pacing the lobby of an Akron Hotel was the broker from New York, whom we shall arbitrarily call Griffith Bill. Griffith,
Yes, Bill. Yeah, that's Bill. William Griffith Wilson. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Bill.
Griffith, aka Bill, was in a jam in an attempt to obtain control of a company and rebuild his financial fantasy. He'd come out to Akron and engaged in a fight for proxies. He had lost the fight. His hotel bill was unpaid. He was almost flat broke. Griffith, aka Bill, wanted a drink. During his career in Wall Street, Bill had turned some sizable deals and had prospered, but through
But through ill-timed.
ill-timed drinking bouts had lost out on his main chances. 5 months before coming to Akron, he had gone on the water wagon through the administrations of the Oxford Group in New York. Fascinated by the problem of alcoholism, he had many times gone back as a visitor to a Central Park West detoxicating hospital where he had been a patient and talked to the inmates. He effected no recoveries, but found that by working on other alcoholics, he could starve off his own craving.
We've got about 13, 14 minutes left. We'll never finish the whole article. So, Andy, you want to take that down? And anyone could easily find it to read up the rest. And let's go by a show of hands if anyone has any questions or comments for our guests or
2
just on
minutes.
their own. We'll go with 2 minutes for each. Let me just open this up. Let's see. Do we have any hands? What's this?
Nope.
No hands.
We got one.
Bobby.
Why don't I see them?
2 hands, Howard.
Yes, 2 hands. Why don't I see any of them?
Go to participants.
Let's see, participants.
Go to gallery then.
Let me show. Let's see.
Sorry, guys. Here. Oh, no, that's not it.
Bobby R.
Yeah,
Okay, let's start with that while we're still finding it here. Oh, thank you.
It mightn't be in order.
Bobby.
okay. Thanks, Howard. Bobby. Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned in the reading about the man on the bed. I can only think of Dotson. So who were you saying? I think you were talking about the man on the bed, and then you mentioned something about he was a
Mechanic.
something,
Mechanic.
huh? A mechanic.
Mechanic.
Oh,
Yeah, is referring to a situation there in Philadelphia that happened. It doesn't refer to what we call the man on the bed, Bill Dotson, that Bill and Bob and Eddie went to visit there and who became AA number three. This is a more modern 1940 case of a man on the bed,
okay.
that they went to visit. I don't know who it is. Maybe someone else does, but I don't know who that might be.
Okay, I
Yeah,
just wanted to make sure it wasn't Bill Dotson. Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Actually, there's a picture right there.
Yeah, I see it.
The man seated on the right is Bill Dotson.
Oh,
Oh, you're
interesting.
right. Yeah, yeah. Those are the three guys then.
No, well, yeah,
Well,
I
that's
guess
Bill
so.
Dotson, and the other two guys are who?
Yeah, I don't know how this picture was staged,
Okay,
but um, yeah, I do know that the person sitting there uh,
that's Bill Dotson, third
is
guy.
Bill Dotson, AA number three.
Okay,
Is that
gotcha.
Jim? Is that the guy here with his back to us, or is that the guy on the other side of the bed? We can
The
see his
guy
face
seated on the right.
seated
The
on the
guy
right.
seated on the
You
right with the
see
part
his
in his hair,
profile.
like a part.
That's that's Bill
Yeah,
Yeah,
Dotson.
that's
interesting.
Bill Dotson. Okay,
Yeah,
great,
the
great.
real man in
Okay,
the bed. Okay, great.
good
Thank you.
stuff. Thanks.
Carol, welcome. You got to unmute.
There we go. Hello,
Yeah.
everyone. I'm glad to be back. I haven't been here for a long time, and my big book is falling apart because of the big book coming alive, which is great. And what happened is that I was listening, and they were talking about what the steps were like then, and what the steps are like now, and everything like that. Yet I'm glad that trial and error is what brought us to where we are right now. And Bill W. stated that AA must change with the times and everything like that. Yet, what happens is that I started really getting into the big book here, and I didn't like it in the beginning. But that's another long story. I didn't like it. All right. But when I came here and really understood it, I really started to understand. And then my question is that we talked about that the para whatever it is, right? I'm not a medical person, but it said that it was made from
Formaldehyde?
acid. Yeah, it said it was made from acid and acetate something something. And how the hell did people survive that?
I don't think it was acid. It was alcohol and ether.
Oh,
I might have mispronounced it and said acid. I'm sorry. It's alcohol and ether.
okay. All right. I just want to say, oh my goodness. That's what I thought. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Rob.
Yeah, thanks for calling on me, Howard. Ash put in the chat that it was acetaldehyde and acid is a colorless liquid or gas, highly reactive, and
Oh,
that's what he got from the internet.
oh, so
Just
therefore
so
there
that's
is an acid of some type.
according to this, yes.
Yeah,
Uh,
interesting.
but I did put my hand up for another reason. Jim, did Ralph Furlong go by the name Bob?
Did who?
Ralph Furlong go by the name of Bob?
Yeah,
He
I don't
did
know.
it.
Yes, he did. It's a long, confusing story about Ralph and Bob Furlong, but yes, they did. They did call him Bob, and so yeah, there was that's why there's a lot of confusion. He's the guy that supposedly the whiskey and the milk story is patterned after.
Yeah, because I had been told that he was in the picture from the Jack Alexander, and the only picture that anybody ever knew of Ralph Furlong was the side of his head. I got that from my buddy Drew, and
Uh-huh.
so, and I had stopped saying that because we knew from the picture that the guy's name in the picture is Bob F. So
Yeah.
now I
Yeah.
can share it with Gusto again.
Yeah,
Thanks very much.
and if I remember, I'll send you what I have on that. But yeah, for some, I think his family called him Bob or something like that. There was some
Ralph,
deal, but
Arthur,
it caused a lot of confusion there. And then there was a stock certificate, but anyway, yeah, that's Ralph Furlong.
Jim, thank you so much for all you do.
Sure.
Thank you. Who's next? Kamisha?
My name is Cammy. I'm an alcoholic. And thank you guys for this presentation and for all the trusted servants making this meeting happen. So, question, like, because it's an anonymous program, how are they getting like the numbers of how many members there are? Like, are they sending something in to the general service or?
Yeah, that's an absolutely fantastic question. I'm working on a presentation now that I will be scheduling soon. But to talk about, for example, the 50, 25, 25 that Bill uses in the foreword, and that was mentioned today. 50 people get sober immediately, 25 sober up after a while, and 25% get better over time. Now, if you read exactly what it says there, you'll notice that if anybody here who has studied statistics, this is not an objective statistical study. In fact, in 1956, Bill wrote a letter to a guy named Howard, probably not our Howard back in 1956, but to Howard, who had asked him a question, and Howard said, "What about these numbers? Are they real?" And Bill said, "Well, they are kind of happy numbers, you know." He said, "No, not exactly." And again, Bill was not writing a statistical journal. And, if you asked Clarence in Cleveland, he had a 93% success rate. If you ask people who are naysayers in AA today, they'll say, "Oh, AA is only getting 5%." And Cleveland, Clarence got 93, and those were the good old days. Well, it was the same. It was the same kind of deal. The alcoholics were the same, and Mark Twain said there are three kinds of lies: lies, damn lies, and statistics. and AA has, not AA, and Bill particularly has played with those numbers. He used to, Nell Wing would try to correct him, and he'd say, "Oh, don't take away my fun," because he would always increase the numbers. But if you read exactly what it says in the foreword, it says, "People who really tried." What does that mean? That's not an objective form of measuring anything. And then he mentions, and then there were thousands more who came and it didn't work for them. And he doesn't take those numbers into consideration. There's a great study that was done, but basically, I'll go back to the bottom line. You are absolutely correct. In an anonymous, disorganized society like Alcoholics Anonymous that keeps no records, they kept better records in the early days than we do today. I doubt if any group that we go to can say, "Hey, we've got a 60% success rate." We just don't keep those records. People come in, they go out. And Jimmy Burwell, when the big book was written, he said, when they were talking about the 100 men, well, that was kind of a fake number too. Bill thought it would be a nice number, but Jimmy Burwell said, well, there were people coming and going in those days, mainly going, and so, there were probably about 65 people when the big book was written. Like I mentioned, it says that AA jumped from 2,000 to 8,000 members. well, that's the official party line, and there were about 6,000 referrals. But at least Arthur S. in his narrative timeline of AA history that you can Google, says that at the end of 1941, when this article was written, there were 5,500 members. So it did make a big difference, and it is impossible to tell what a big difference it did make. There's so many stories of these early people in the 40s who said, I came in because I read the Saturday Evening Post article. It was a big, big deal, and made a big difference to a lot of people, and to the growth of AA, and gave it a lot of, especially coming from Jack Alexander, who was a gangbuster, who was had a reputation for bringing out the truth in these things. So.
Yeah. Remember with Clarence's 93%, if we interviewed people while they are in the hospital and then decided, well, maybe this guy isn't ready, but this guy is. And then only then do we tell them where the AA meeting was.
Yeah. And they did a lot of pre-screening. You had to do, now I don't know if this is where 90 and 90 came from, but you had to be 3 months sober before you could go to a meeting, in a lot of these places, especially in Cleveland. So there was a lot of this, like Gary mentions, a lot of pre-screening, and we're just not going to count the guys that fail. So we're not going to publish statistics that show that we're not working. That would be dumb.
Thank you. George, do you want to take a minute and let's wrap it up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that they haven't done it lately, but our local intergroup here in the Houston, Harris County area, they used to keep track of how many 24-hour chips they would sell to the local groups, and how many 1-year chips they would sell to the local groups. And so, in a way, I guess they were trying to say how many people stayed sober, and how many people went back out. So, but they don't do that consistently. That was a few years ago they used to do that. And I was just wondering if any of the other intergroups do that kind of thing.
That's one of the ways that they've tried to measure measure it. And there's a study. I'm going to give you the name of it. You can look it up if you want. It's huge. It's if you're really interested in the recovery rates in Alcoholics Anonymous and why most of what you hear is not true, you can search for Alcoholics Anonymous recovery rates, Arthur S. Alcoholics Anonymous recovery rates. Rob is doing that, and I'm sure he will put a link into the chat here pretty soon. Alcoholics Anonymous recovery rates, and by Arthur S. And it's found in several places on the internet. And he did this study on recovery rates through the history of AA, everywhere from Akron to Cleveland, particularly. And he talks about the intergroup studies of the chips, and why most of it, when it boils, it's very interesting. But at the very bottom line, the statistics that we have, the numbers that we have, are not something that we should, that we can really take to the bank.
Thank you, Jim. Chris, did I see your hand up a minute ago? Chris?
No, but I got a couple of things that I wouldn't mind sharing.
Go, please.
I so appreciate the detail that some of our historians and people who really pay attention, like in a very serious way, our history. I really do appreciate that. I've never been able to to pay attention long enough to be able to do that myself. What I really, really am inspired by are the story of what was going on in early Alcoholics Anonymous, and how all these pieces fit together. Jack Alexander, Carl Jung, John D. Rockefeller Jr. All these pieces fit together in such a way that this movement got off the ground. And the other thing that I think, a lot of us believe that there was a real strict way of going through the steps in the early days. I believe that there was an economy to it, and there was a latitude in how each person would work with the other person. But there was one thing that they were doing back then that we are not doing today. And that's going out there and trying to find alcoholics, like going to the hospitals, going all over the place. Like there'd be one meeting a week, and the rest of the nights they're out looking for alcoholics, and how quickly they were putting people to work with alcoholics, especially after the Jack Alexander article. They were inundated with referrals. So they were taking people very newly sober and sending them out on these 12-step calls. And I just, this story is our history, and I love it. I'm so grateful to be associated with such a crazy, bunch of people. You know what I mean? Anyway, thanks for pointing me out,
Chris,
Howard.
thank you, Ernie Kurtz. I'm sorry, Chris. That's Ernie Kurtz. Story and storytelling is Alcoholics Anonymous. And these early stories, and the stories that come out of Akron, the stories that come out of Cleveland, the stories that come out of New York are different stories. They did things differently. They did not do it all the same, but these stories are just like, you may have your group and they do everything right, but there's a group around the corner that you'd never go to because they don't do it right, and this autonomy started very early on. But you are absolutely right in one thing, and that is taking the message of sobriety to other alcoholics was probably the one thing in the program that everybody pretty much agreed on. The rest of the stuff was he did, she didn't, there were a lot of differences but let's get sober and share the message of sobriety was it. One quote that is often misused, if not misunderstood, is, they talk about Dr. Bob said that there's an easy way and a hard way to get sober. And the hard way is just to go to meetings. Now thumpers use that to say, well, you got to be doing. Well, that wasn't what he was talking about at all. But Dr. Bob went on to say, yeah, there's an easy way and a hard way. And the easy way is to go to the hospital, is to go to the ward, and where you can pass the message and where you can hear other stories of recovery. And he wasn't talking about going to church or praying or working the steps. He was talking about going to the hospital and carrying the message to other alcoholics. So great comments. Thank you, Howard, for inviting me. I appreciated this, and sorry if I talked too much.
Hello.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was unmuted. I just wanted to thank, some of our special guests today, and how proud I am to be part of the Big Book Comes Alive group that attracts people like Chris Schroeder and Jim Worley and the notorious POD and Gary. Just so thankful for all you folks. So we got a good way of closing. Stefan and George, hang around afterwards. We'll talk a little bit, but we have a way of closing with Charlotte taking us out.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, what a privilege to be here tonight. And Jim Worley, a special thank you to you, mate. That was I hope we get some more as well, please. That was amazing. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Kathy. My name is Charlotte. I am an alcoholic. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously, you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless of us. This is the great fact for us. And if everyone can unmute and join in, please abandon yourself to God.
To God as
As you
you
understand
understand
Your
God.
faults to him
God.
Admit
and
your
to
faults
Faults
to
to
yourself.
him
him.
and to your
Clear
fellows.
away
Clear
the
away
Clear away
the
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 wreckage
wreckage
of
of
your
past.
Give
past.
freely of what
freely.
you
Freely
find,
of
Freely
what you
and
shall
find
be
and
within
join
the
us.
join
fellowship of the
us.
He shall be
Shall
with
be
you in
with
the
you.
You will
fellowship of the
surely be
Spirit,
But
and
comforted.
you will
Thanks
surely
for
Right.
meet some of
some
us
of
as you
us
May
trudge a
God
road
bless
of
you.
happy
have a
destiny.
And
destiny.
the
God
Lord's
bless you
Prayer.
and keep
Our
you
Father,
until
our
then.
who
Father
art
who
in
art
Who
in
art
heaven,
in
heaven.
heaven,
hallowed be thy
hallowed
name.
be thy
Hallowed be
name.
thy
Thy
name.
Thy
will be
kingdom
done
come, thy will
earth
be
as
done
it is in
on
heaven.
earth
On earth
as it
as
is
in
in
Our
heaven.
heaven.
daily
Our
bread,
daily
and
bread, and
But
forgive us
This
this
our
day
is our
our
trespasses,
daily
daily
bread.
bread,
as we forgive those
forgive us
who
our
trespass
trespasses,
lead
as
us
we
not
against
into
forgive those who
temptation, but
trespass
deliver us
Pass
from
against
evil.
against
us.
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 Hallelujah.
Lead
Lead
us
us
not
not into
into
temptation.
temptation, but deliver us from
For
evil.
Thine is the
For thine
kingdom and
is
the
the
power
kingdom,
and glory
the
forever
power,
and
and the
ever.
glory,
Amen.
forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you, Howard.